Welcome to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast where seeing things differently inspires limitless possibilities. This podcast is being brought to you by Blind Beginnings, an organization based in Vancouver, Canada, that supports children and youth who are blind or partially sighted, along with their families. Limitless was created in order to inform, educate, entertain, and share stories from within the blind and partially sighted community in order to show the world that the opportunities for those who are blind or partially sighted are truly limitless. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to your host, the Executive Director and Founder of Blind Beginnings, Shawn Marcellet.
Welcome back to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Marcellet, and thank you so much for joining us, especially this month because it is Blindness Awareness Month. And today we are talking about employment. Did you know that 75 to 80% of people who are blind are unemployed, which is not a very encouraging statistic. And we wanted to talk about that today. And with me is one of our co-hosts, Keisha. Welcome back to the podcast, Keisha.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's really awesome to be back.
Yes. And we also have a guest today, Megan. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an awesome opportunity to be on here.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I've been wanting to have you as a guest for a while. So why don't, so Keisha and Megan, can you guys introduce yourselves a little bit about your vision, your level of vision, and just sort of a brief overview of your employment. Where are you at in terms of job search, employment? Why is this topic interesting to you? Keisha, why don't you go first?
All right, so my name is Keisha, and I have a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and I've been slowly losing sight my whole life, and I do have light perception, but not very much more than that currently. I am in the final year of my undergraduate in tourism management at the moment, and so I've been really busy with that. And very, it's kind of an anxious time because, we're going to graduate and hopefully try to find employment. And in terms of employment that I have held in the past, throughout my degree, I've held some various employment with my university, working for the study abroad department when I came back from studying abroad, and working with the Faculty of Student Development, kind of doing like student storyteller work, kind of talking about the student experience, and I've held some summer employment when I was still in high school, and for a couple of my initial years of university, I worked for a museum in my hometown, just kind of doing that kind of guide work and research, and I have recently held a job working for children's theater, just like kind of jobs like that, like kind of smaller things, and or like university related things, but yeah, I'll talk more about that later.
Awesome. Megan, how about you?
All right, so my name's Megan. I have bilateral anaphtaphalia, so I don't see much of anything. So right now, I am currently not really looking for a job because I'm actually running a business. So that's where I'm at right now. In jobs that I've had in the past, I have worked. So back in high school for a summer job, I worked for Alberta Society for the Visually Impaired for the summer, and I did that for a couple of years, and then. During my undergrad, I actually worked at a rafting company for a summer.
So, I mean, obviously I have a job. I'm the executive director of Blind Beginnings, but after university, after my first degree, it took me a while to get a job. And then I did get a part-time minimum wage job for a little while. Went and did an internship working abroad, and then came back and then was unemployed for another chunk of time. So over the course of my adult life, there's definitely been some periods of unemployment, and it is really challenging to get work when you're blind, which is one of the reasons I wanted to, which is the reason I want to have this conversation today. And Megan, when I met you, you said that you had looked for a job after university as well.
Oh yeah.
And after
yeah.
a period of time, we're just fed up with the job search process,
frustrating.
which is why you started your business, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it was just a super frustrating experience, and I ended up not just like I looked for 2.5 years trying to find employment, and I was unable to do that. And just some of the experiences I had were just it felt like banging my head against the wall. And so I said, hey, if no one's gonna hire me, I'm gonna hire myself, and that's how I'm here.
Let's back up the truck a little. I'm curious. We all grew up with a visual impairment. Sort of, what was the conversation like when you were growing up around you getting a job?
So in terms of my family is always like really valued like being hard workers and stuff, and so like with them it was always like, no, you'll find work. Like they're, everybody works. We all work. You're gonna work, and they were pretty empowering in that way, which I'm really grateful for. And that being said, and like, I've been lucky enough to have some pretty supportive people like that. But that being said, I've also had people, on the reverse who have said like, oh, like, typically people who don't know me very well or are not familiar with visually impaired people as much, who are like, oh, what are you going to be able to do? Like, I don't really know what you could do, or things like that, like kind of doubting the abilities, which is, something that we encounter and we deal with and figure out. I even one time had this one memory really sticks out to me, of this person who actually became a closer friend of mine, but it started off a little patchy because they said to me, you don't need to worry about work. You can just let other people take care of you. And like, they were just proposing that I don't bother working and that I didn't really have the capability. Mm-hmm. And I remember just feeling like really quite enraged by that. And of course, my natural reaction when people say I can't do something is to be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it too, and I'm gonna do it well. And to this day, like, I know that sighted people go through this, and everybody goes through this at certain times. But I know, we're talking about visually impaired people right now, and I know, like, I have a lot of fear about job security and about finding employment and holding it, and and then not even just that, but like moving on to like job satisfaction too. Like, am I going to enjoy the job that I have? I mean, I just hope that I can find work to start with, but yeah, it's definitely something that frightens me. But that's kind of like what the dialogue was, like a mixed bag, like people that were like, yeah, you're 100% capable, and people who were like, I don't know if you're capable, and what could you do? What could you contribute?
Yeah. What about you, Megan?
So when I was younger, I had some pretty wild dreams. I wanted to be a volcanologist when I grew up.
What is that?
Volcanologist is a person who studies volcanoes. And so I wanted to be like that person, like, looking into the magma chamber, being like, well, it's hot down there and it might erupt. So I had these crazy, that was one of them. I wanted to go up into space was another one. I had all these crazy like aspirations. And so, I don't know. I felt really like it was kind of like a normal thing. Like, they're like, oh, you're going to work, you're going to be successful. And, it was just kind of, I felt like I was pretty supported, and like, just growing up, I was kind of treated like everyone else, like, oh, you're gonna work, you're gonna find a job, you're gonna make your way, kind of thing. I had some naysayers. I distinctly remember someone saying, oh, I hope you don't end up like selling pencils on the street. I don't know why that kind of stuck with me. I was like, oh, that's thanks for that kind of thing.
Wow. Well, I remember discussions with my family about what sort of job I would be able to do. So it was never, what do you want to be? It was like literally the three of us sitting around scratching our heads, wondering what I could be. So they suggested a piano teacher because I could play the piano, and they suggested a court reporter because I could type fast, even though the court reporter uses a totally different keyboard. They suggested, just, I can't even remember. I think counselor did come up because that you're just listening, but it was never what do you want to do? It was always like, what will you be able to do as a blind person? So definitely very limiting. Okay, so let's I want to kind of break this down for people who maybe are sighted who have never really thought about this, but some of the barriers, even in the job search process, like we've talked about, our own insecurities or our own limited beliefs about what we might be able to do, our own fears, our own maybe internalized ableism even, but there are some limitations in what we could even apply for. One that comes to mind for me is just transportation. Like, it has to be on a bus route, and preferably not a bus route that requires me to take, 3 different buses to get there. Has to be practical, right?
And not only that, but a lot of jobs will actually have a requirement that says you need to have your BC driver's license.
Yes, I found that too. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like your class 4 or 5 driver's license, and that's like right on the application thing. So it's like, okay, that automatically DQs me.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, sorry. Even last year, I applied for a position as a dispatch for a BC wildfire service. And I had a couple of people who, some friends from who work in the forestry industry who were like, you'd be amazing at that job. You should apply. And I mean, there was a couple of barriers during the application process. I mean, one of them being that they require a BC driver's license, but the person I was talking to was kind of like, just try anyway and see what happens, because maybe they'll make an exception. I mean, the other thing is I don't know how it is with other government jobs. I have yet to apply for more, but there's, at least for this one, there's quite a hefty process of online testing to kind of vet, the vetting process. And I know that was really challenging because of the inaccessibility and the compatibility with screen reader. And I remember I even because there's always that part of the application that's like, hey, if you need assistance, contact us. So I did contact them, which was a little bit nerve-wracking because we'll talk about disclosure later, but I was like, oh crow, I have to disclose now. And I did, and in order to figure out how to make this vetting process accessible, and in the end, it didn't work out. I don't think it's because of my lack of skills. I just think there are various reasons it didn't work out. But that was a very challenging and interesting process.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just trying to think if there's any other barriers besides transportation, because it really is such a big one.
And I think also there can be a lack of resources too. If you're looking for work and you're just I know at the end of my job search, I was taking whatever. I'd go on jobs.com and I'd be trying to find, I'll apply for whatever, even if it's not what I went to school for. And there was really no support. And this is how you write a resume, or this is what this is how you this is some stuff you can do to help make your interview more successful. This is as a blind person, I never had that kind of oriented towards blindness, because it's different. So I never, and it could just be me just not having it. I don't know if I'm sure there are resources out there. That was a challenge that I found.
We do talk about those things in Blind Beginnings workshops. We have a What Happens After Grad workshop and Creating Confidence workshops.
I think that's super important.
It is. I think let's talk about disclosure, because it's a huge one. So depending on your level of vision, if you can maybe get by without people noticing.
I cannot get by without people.
No, I can't either. And I don't think Keisha can. I mean, if we're sitting still, maybe, but
yeah, only if you're sitting still. I like to fidget. So it's not even that.
So yeah, like, do you wait and show up for an interview and shock them with your white cane or your guide dog? Or do you,
I don't know.
disclose on the phone when they call you in for an interview? Or do you have it on your cover letter or in your resume? And we talk through all of those scenarios, but there's a downside to everything, right? The earlier you tell somebody, the more likely they'll discriminate. But if you wait and you shock them in the interview, they might be so distracted and kind of put out by the fact that they didn't know you were blind and maybe uncomfortable that they're not even listening to what you're saying in that interview now, right?
Okay, so I've done it both ways. I at the beginning I would disclose right away, like I put it in my resume on my cover letter, more like, and I kept on getting, oh, sorry, you're not the right fit for this job. Oh, sorry, we found someone else who's more qualified and who would be a better fit for it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try this the other way, right? Because I kind of got the suspicion, like I had all the qualifications, so someone who's more qualified, I went to school for this stuff, right? So I was kind of like, okay, this isn't working. So I did a couple times disclose. There's one time when I did an interview, and it was kind of obvious when I like walked in, because they kind of took me aside, and it was like, oh yeah, so I just thought I'd let you know that I have a bit of a visual impairment, as in I can't really see anything. And that didn't work out so well for me either. So
Right.
yeah, I got like 10 days later, I got another email back. They didn't even call me back that time. It was like, oh, sorry, it's not going to work out. And so I don't know, like, that's a question I really don't know the answer to, because I haven't had luck either way.
I always disclose at the interview. I just think that I want people to call me in for the skills that they think that I have on my resume and in my cover letter, and in any references or that they may have pre-called. I don't know, but I like to try to see. I want a fair assessment of my documents, and then when I go into the interview, if they're shocked, they're shocked, but at least they're giving me a chance to speak and defend myself and present myself as the best candidate that I can. And certainly I've experienced people being very shocked and distracted by it, and I've experienced people who are calm about it. And I try really hard. It takes a lot of energy, of course, but I do try to go into interviews, like with a lot of as much like energy as I can, and like, really crack jokes and try to break ice with people. But I do try to read the room. Like, obviously I'm not going to be too goofy if it's a more serious kind of atmosphere, but I do find people really are receptive to humor. Also just like creative, just like creativity, like, I prepare before I go, as I'm sure we all do to an extent, and like, try to be ready for what their like, questions might be based on the business or whatever it is. And just try to be as like prepared and ahead of the game and on the ball as possible. And I don't know, maybe there's still going to be discrimination. Definitely there probably is. And definitely I've had a lot of rejections as well, but I just kind of figure I don't want them to say no right when they see my resume, and I'd rather at least be able to speak.
It's funny. I think I'm probably the opposite, but it's also because so much of my work experience is working with people with disabilities in some way or another. And obviously that's what I wanted to do. And even before I started working in the blindness field, I wanted to work with youth. I wanted to work with people who were facing some kind of a challenge. And so I would just, in my cover letter, I would try to sell my blindness as an asset to the job, whatever it was. And I could usually find a connection in some way. So, it wasn't like the main focus of my cover letter, but it would be just a statement like, and because I've grown up with a disability, I've learned how to problem solve. And, or because I'm visually impaired, I'm really good at listening and, whatever. Like I would try to spin it in a positive way. But mostly it's because I'm super uncomfortable when people don't know, like that feeling of showing up and them. I did do that a few times when I was in university applying for summer jobs and showing up at the interview and they didn't know I was blind. And I was just as uncomfortable as they were, I think, because I knew that I had shocked them. I knew that it wasn't expected and it made me really uncomfortable. So
fair enough.
Yeah, but I mean, there is no right answer, and it depends on what you're applying for and your who you are and your situation and everything, right? So what do we think some of the concerns of the employers are? Like, what are they, obviously they don't know how. I'm going to say in most cases, whoever is interviewing us has maybe never met anybody who was blind before, is probably not up to speed on, how we access technology or computers or how we navigate the world, right? So probably a lot of assumptions they're making. They're probably thinking, how the heck are they going to be able to do this job? And probably thinking if they were blind, they wouldn't be able to do the job, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that I agree with you both there. I think a lot of people do try to put themselves in what they think is the shoes of us, not but they lack certain context that is really critical.
Absolutely.
When because we've been and it's not their fault, but we've been through our own lives, of course, and we know our capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. I really think one of the big things that I've seen employers concerned about is safety. They're worried about how we're going to do the job safely and how we're going to remain safe and also the safety of others if in case we do something or have an accident or anything like that. And I venture to guess that a lot of I don't know about a lot, but that at least some employers think that maybe because of a disability, we are more accident prone or we are more susceptible to injury, etc. But again, there's the context that they don't know. There's always way more to the story than we could even know in by one interview or even a few,
Yeah, I think safety is a big one for sure.
I've seen safety come up a couple times for sure.
And I also think maybe productivity,
they're gonna get the job done.
Yeah, and is there an assumption that we're going to be slower than everybody else? It's going to cost them more money. We're going to require a bunch of equipment, maybe, and are they going to have to pay for that? Yeah, all of those things, right?
Like assistive technology as well. I can only imagine being an employer and not knowing anything about a visually impaired potential candidate and being like, whoa, where do we even begin? What do we need? How would we even need to start? I can imagine it seeming daunting. But sure, at the same time, I as we well know, we can all see it from our sides too, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah. So how do you alleviate the concerns that employers have maybe when you're in the job interview, especially you, Keisha? You're just showing up, shocking the pants off them. How do you manage that? How do you put them at ease and then alleviate their concerns and all while trying to sell yourself and get the job? That sounds so challenging.
It does. That sounds like a job in itself.
Yes.
For me, I do, as anybody does going into the interview, I try to do a bit of research about the place first, about the employer. And then based on that, I will like come up with a list of the problems I think they're gonna throw at me. Just based on my experience in the past. And so I'll basically just be like, okay, if I was them, what would I be asking? This, 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 and this. Then I write all the solutions down like that I can think of. And then sometimes I'll even bring like materials and be like, or like assistive tech and be like, to the interview, based on what the job is, and basically like, when we get to that part of the interview, I'll be like, okay, here's my solutions to these problems. Like, I don't pose the problems to them because I don't want to create more problems.
Right. Maybe you haven't thought of this concern that you should be thinking about.
But if they bring the problem up, I say, hopefully I have a solution for it and then I'll be like, here's my solution. If they want to see assistive tech, or if they're like, oh, how are you going to access this? I'll be like, okay, well, this is what I've done in the past. Here's this and this. And those are my main techniques.
So I just like Keisha said, tons of like preparation. You do your research, you look into where you're getting the interview, like, who's like what's going on, like doing all that kind of research, and then making a list of things that you might come across, and then trying to plan out how you would how am I going to address this, right? And you don't tell them, but if it comes up, you've got that covered. You've got your bases covered. And then like I found myself like, I don't know, I do these things, like I tell stories. So if like I'm in an interview and I sometimes like embellish things, like I'll find myself telling cool things that I've done, like, oh, I've made it to the top of Sparrowhawk and climb these mountains and stuff like that. Not because I was like, it's totally extraneous, but just to kind of like, I can do things, right? Like I'm capable, I can do hard things. And you just kind of, you turn up the charisma and like, you got to read the room, make people laugh. Like, that's kind of how I've
so you're kind of like trying to impress them, or like make sure they know your capabilities, like shatter those misconceptions of like this helpless blind person that they might have, right? I tend to try to anticipate what concerns they would have and then bring them up myself. So like, you might be wondering how I would do paperwork. Well, this is I have a speech program on my computer, so if I can just get things in an electronic file, I shouldn't have too much problem. Or and I generally would say, like, I have my own computer with a screen reader on it that I can bring, if that's depending on the situation. But just kind of letting them know that it's not going to cost you a ton. I know what I need. I can communicate that to you, and we can figure this out together. And sometimes you don't even know what the challenges are going to be because you don't have the job yet, right? So that's where you're sort of selling that. I'm really good at problem solving because I've had to do it my whole life. So I'm sure I can figure this out as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Have either of you offered to volunteer at somewhere where you were hoping to eventually work as a way of kind of proving your abilities?
I have, yes.
Yeah, I have too.
I've like that's actually something that I've been thinking about recently with some places too. And I definitely have.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it has paid off in a job a couple times actually, where I started as a volunteer and then a job came up, and either it was offered to me in one situation, they wanted to pay me. And then in another situation, I applied for the job, but because I had been volunteering, it sort of gave me that in. So I think it definitely has potential to help you be successful. Did it help in your situation, Megan?
No.
Oh.
No, I didn't. I mean, it was a cool experience, but it didn't really lead to anything.
Right. Yeah, that's discouraging. I mean, we shouldn't have to offer our services for free. Just to be given a chance.
Yeah.
But
I was also really young when I volunteered too, so that could have been an issue as well. Like just because I was so young.
right. I know for me, when I was going through my job search and I would have an interview and I would get all excited, I would think that it went really well. I would imagine myself in the job and I would, totally put all my eggs in that basket, and then I would get the call. The rejection.
Yeah, the rejection.
You didn't get the
call.
job. I'm sorry. You were our second choice. I don't know how many times I heard that.
Oh,
They probably
wow.
say
I've not got
that to
one.
everybody who didn't get the job, but I don't know.
I've never gotten that one before.
Oh, really? Okay.
No.
Or it was a really hard decision, but
I've
we
gotten,
went
yeah,
with the
it's a
other
really hard
person.
decision.
Yeah.
But you didn't make the cut.
So I would be devastated. I would allow myself a day or so of feeling sorry for myself, like total pity party. And then I would think, okay, if I give up now, I'm definitely going to stay unemployed, or, the other option is to keep trying. And of course, I always continued to keep trying. But Megan, you're saying 2.5 years. That's a long time to keep
I took a
trying.
different
So
path. Yeah.
what happened? Like what was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was the moment when you were like, screw this, I'm doing my own thing?
Well, so I kind of have to go back a bit. So a while back, my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that kind of led me to think, I should, I'm really like, thinking about what I'm putting on my body, like, lotions, deodorants, like all these things I'm buying from the store. There's a bunch of chemicals in them. And like, it just made me, take a step back and think about that. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll go more natural. Like I'll try natural deodorants. And that was my first foray into that. And I was like, none of these are working. So I, buy certain brands and I just smelled horrible. Okay. and eventually I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, can I make my own? So I looked up a recipe on how to do it and I made it. And the first one was the complete flop. It was like half liquid and I didn't know what to do with it. But then I kind of stuck with it and I actually turned out that I could make my own deodorant and, people would sit beside me on the bus. So it worked out, pretty half decent. and then I kind of was getting towards graduating at that point. And I was, I went to a job fair and it was held at the university. And I was like, oh, sweet. I'm a couple semesters out from graduating. This is really good timing. So I went to the job fair. I'm like, oh, I'll make connections. I'll, get a job. It'll be great. And I stepped in and they were like, oh, sorry, we made a huge obstacle course for you. Oh no, we'll help you get around this. I'm like, no, hold on. I'm actually here to like find to hand out some resumes and they kept on like shuttling me through this job fair. And that's kind of when I realized like, this is going to be a little harder than I thought. So that went like, handing out resumes and stuff like that went on for 2.5 years. And I graduated and I was like looking for work and I couldn't find work. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not working for me. This is really just not working. I don't know that there was any moment that made me realize it wasn't working. I felt like I was banging my head against the wall. I was so frustrated. I wasn't getting anywhere. It's like being on a treadmill and like, instead of going forward, you're actually going backwards. Like I just felt so discouraged and nothing that I was doing was paying off. And so I'm like, well, okay, what can I do? Like, I don't want to be unemployed for the rest of my life. What am I going to do? And I'm like, well, I can make deodorants. What else can I make? So I, started looking up recipes, making recipes. I knew a lot about essential oils because deodorants and because of plants and stuff like that. So I came up with a working recipe for bath bombs and lotions. And I said, okay, well, if no one else is going to hire me, then I'll hire myself. And my mom actually sells bread at a farmer's market. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll sell, my lotions and deodorants and stuff at a farmer's market. And now I run a business called Impaired, selling all these body and bath stuff, products. So I mean, it's just a new thing. It's a kind of an adventure. Like I'm just kind of starting out, so um, we'll see where it goes. But it's definitely a lot better than just banging my head against the wall looking for a job I couldn't find.
That's so
And
exciting.
you have an income
I do have an income.
from this.
I mean, of course, because like when businesses start out, oftentimes you're in the black for a bit, in the red for a bit, but yeah, I'm definitely making money.
Awesome.
Not a whole lot right now, but that
Mm-hmm.
it's a baby business. So
I think that's amazing. So Megan helped out at our virtual summer camp with one of the teen sessions, and she sent us all the stuff to make bath bombs, and and then led us through how to make them. I still have one left. I'm kind of saving it because once it's gone, then well, I'll just buy some from you. But it was so fun. It was the highlight of my week. It was probably the session that I enjoyed the most. It was really great. So
that's so cool.
Yes.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun teaching it. It was tons of fun for sure.
So maybe if people want to check you out, how can they find you and they want to look at your...
So right now I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
Because I haven't started a website yet because new business, and like the Christmas season is coming, so it's like really hectic. I'm in a couple of shows, so I'm trying to get inventory up and stuff. So I don't have a website yet, but I am on Facebook. And yeah, just hit me up on Facebook at Empower Care, and or like an email, or I have limited ways right now, but for
That's
sure.
Okay. I think that's the hard part when you're starting out, is like you can invest time in product,
you're only one
or you
person.
can invest time in like the infrastructure, the back side of things, right? The website and the marketing materials and that kind of thing, but then you don't have product to sell. So it's sort of like, where do you put your time?
Yeah, that's totally where I'm at right now. Thanks for eloquently putting that. That is exactly where I am right now.
Well, I started a nonprofit, so I do understand.
Fair enough.
Yes. Okay, so I mean, back to this employment thing. If there are any employers out there listening, what do we want them to understand about our abilities, or about just giving us a chance? Like, what do we wish they understood?
I guess I would say, like, I understand, that you have concerns, but just like don't overthink it. Like, there are things that we have to do in order to achieve accessibility. And we do things differently. And I mean, that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It doesn't mean it's going to be harmful or expensive or anything. So I would say, like, don't overthink it. Consult with the person who you are considering employing, and there's a lot there is an untapped wealth of employees who are visually impaired and blind and disabled in different ways, and they're truly an untapped wealth. I can speak for so many people that I know who would be incredible assets to so many teams, and really, really intelligent, organized, eloquent, outgoing leadership types, creatives, practical thinkers, so many brilliant people. And so to say, no, I'm not going to hire this person simply because they can't see would be to miss an opportunity, I think. And I know it could seem daunting, but there are a lot of technologies out there. The world is much more. There are a lot of solutions. I would say, don't be afraid. Really think about I know that there's a lot of people who are willing to try and be creative and out of the box thinkers, and work with employers to achieve, what what the employer is looking for, and I just really think that if you think somebody, like, look at somebody for their skills before you look at their disability, and really try to know them. And in the interview, if you can, try to turn off that, oh my gosh, they're blind, and see, oh my goodness, they have all of these skills. What kind of employee are they, rather than being like, oh, they're disabled, they're a write-off. That's what I would say. Like,
Totally.
You made us sound really good there, Keisha. Thank you for that.
You really did. You really did.
What do you think, Megan? What do you want employers to know?
I think there's a whole bunch of untapped potential ideas and opportunities that you're missing out on if you don't give us a chance. Having different perspectives, having different angles to come at with problem solving, just having a diverse way of looking at things. I think we have so much to contribute, and I think you're missing out if you don't give us a chance.
And I would add, people with disabilities are so, I think, well, I can speak for myself. I cannot speak on behalf of all people with disabilities, but I think those of us who have really struggled to find work are so darn grateful when we do get a job. We are going to work so hard. We're going to be on time every day. We're going to be making sure that we are productive. We are going to be putting in extra time if we need to, in order to, accomplish what's expected of us. Like, we want to prove ourselves. We want to be successful. And I think that we are going to be some of your best employees if you give us a chance. So, who else is like just so grateful to go to work every day, right? I remember my first real full-time job, and I didn't even like weekends because I liked being at work so much. I loved that I was finally contributing, and I liked my job, and I liked the people I worked with. But mostly I just felt like I'm finally contributing. Like, that was so important to me. What about advice for people who are blind or visually impaired who are struggling to find work?
I don't know. I just, you're not alone. Like, there are other people who have gone through this struggle before, and it's definitely, you're definitely not alone in this. And I think you've got more in you than you know. Like, when when you're really struggling, you can make stuff happen. If you're resourceful, you can find a way. There is an option of, like, starting a business, like I did. You can definitely do that. There's totally different roads that you can take. You can leverage contacts. A lot of the jobs that I've held before, were basically, like, I got them through contacts, and so network and leverage those contacts and those relationships that you have, because they can really pay off.
I would agree with Megan on a few different fronts. Definitely, I think that sometimes we underestimate our own capabilities. So don't forget that you are very capable, and that keep trying, keep putting that elbow grease in. I know it's tough, and we've all been there, but don't give up. And like Megan said, there are many avenues. Sometimes you will have to be a little bit creative, and sometimes it might just work out. And also, like, I would like to also, because Megan just said so many good things, but the power of contacts and, like, creating connections with people truly is a real asset in the job search and beyond, just in life. If you're volunteering somewhere, or if you have professors, or if you have just experiences, like with sports or anything like that, like, and you meet people, build relationships and keep them in your life, and not just obviously to use them for their contact, but I think it goes without saying that they can be there. Your friends, your colleagues, everybody is like, people want to support each other. I mean, I think we've all probably spoken on behalf of a friend at some point or another, and friends speak on behalf of us as well. And so I think that that's all like very important stuff. And just don't be afraid to like think outside the box, and like just try to like see things. If you can have some humor around things, that's always a plus, I've always found. And think of like really like think of the things that you do love, because one thing is, I find people really love to hear people speak about passions, and it's very engaging. So like what are the things that you love? Do you love music? Do you love sports? Do you love reading books? Like whatever it is, like that's also another way you can try to connect with people. Or like maybe if you dig, or if you are involved in something, maybe it'll lead you down a path that will help you find employment. The other thing is like, reach out. Like, you aren't alone. There are resources. There are people who are going through the same struggle. The other thing is like, don't draw the line and look at a job. I mean, don't immediately assume that a job is not open to you as a visually impaired person. Like, I've lately, I've seen some accounts of visually impaired and blind people in jobs that I was like, wow, that's so cool. Mm-hmm. Like, I am very, like, that's super empowering to see about that. And like, I always have a hard time saying the word inspirational, because I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to be inspirational for everyday things, but I find people inspirational for bigger things, and things that are truly motivating to me. And one of them is like seeing people in jobs that I would love to have, like that I didn't necessarily think, like even in my subconscious I was like, I'm not sure if that was something I could do, but then I see, oh, so and so did it over in England or whatever, because there's a whole community too all over the world of people with visual impairments. So and also the thing is sometimes, I know this is getting a little crazy, but sometimes somebody has to be the first.
My advice, I think 3 things are really stand out for me. Find something you're passionate about, like Keisha said. If I think a lot of energy is spent on what will you be able to do without vision, and less on what do you want to do? Like, what makes you tick? What gets you excited? And maybe the thing that you're passionate about, like, is volcanoes. But if it's something that you're passionate about, you're probably going to figure out a way around whatever obstacles are thrown in your path, because you really, really want to do this thing. Whereas if it's something that you're just able to do, like answer a phone in a call center, no offense to anybody who works in a call center, but like, is that really, and maybe some people are passionate about that, so that's cool. But just because you're able to doesn't mean that it's going to light your fire. It's going to make you excited. So when obstacles arise in that situation, you might be less motivated to figure them out. The second thing, I really would recommend volunteering. Volunteering in the field you want to work in. That is a way to make connections with people, for them to see what you're capable of, for them to get to know you, to see if you're a good fit. It's also an opportunity for you to figure out, like, maybe you volunteer in a volcano and you figure out, actually, I don't like volcanoes. I don't know how you volunteer in a volcano, but
you volunteer in a volcano.
I just keep thinking of the movie Joe versus the Volcano, and it's an older Tom Hanks movie. You guys are too young to know it, but he jumps into a volcano and the volcano spits him back out again. And anyways, that's
awesome.
Yeah, you got to see that movie, Megan.
I should.
And then the last thing is just never give up. Like, keep trying. It is hard. It is so hard sometimes. It's so discouraging, but persevere, because eventually you will be successful, and it feels really good to finally accomplish that, to find that job, to make it work, however that is, whether that's starting your own business or getting a job with somebody else. It's worth the fight, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me for this conversation. I think this is a really important topic, and I really appreciate your contributions.
Thank you
Thanks
so much for having us.
Jinx.
And thank you for listening. You've been listening to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. If you have a question, a comment, a future topic request, please send us an email to limitless@blindbeginnings.ca. Please share our podcast with a friend, especially during Blindness Awareness Month, and join us next time.
This podcast has been brought to you by Blind Beginnings, an organization based in Vancouver, Canada, that supports children and youth who are blind or partially sighted, along with their families. Music for this podcast is composed by Shawn Bishop and Clement Chow. Production and audio editing by Rob Minot. For more information about Blind Beginnings and the work it does to support children and youth who are blind and partially sighted, along with their families, visit us on the web at www.blindbeginnings.ca, and also remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.